if I didn't step out, I don't think I would have seen this simple and short. There are things that you see just by virtue of you being in a market, right? Because when you're there, you're interacting with stakeholders, you're assessing the numbers, you're looking at the gaps in the market, and you're saying to yourself, oh, there's something here. Oh, there's an opportunity here.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And it's my pleasure to welcome you once again to this very episode of The Adventures. My name is Kunle Olufemi, and, this is The Adventures podcast. As you know, on The Adventures, we like to share the stories of vision and courage behind the brands and the businesses that you see around you every day. Our hope is that as we share their stories of vision and courage, you're able to take some light, some inspiration from their stories, and so be able to achieve a level of success faster than even they did. So once again, thank you for joining us today. My pleasure today to welcome my friend and former colleague on the Adventures podcast, Miss Toyin Sanwo. Toyin Sanwo is and you will hear from her, she is the founder and the CEO of Dryva Logistics. And Dryva Logistics, basically, Toyin was talking about that. Dryva. Okay. Dryva Logistics basically tried to create tailor-made logistics solutions for organizations, of course, within Nigeria at first and beyond the shores of Nigeria. Toyin founded this. I was like, part of it when she was starting it, I saw it, right? But she wouldn't, hire me. But not a story for another day, right? So you set out a couple of years back to start Dryva Logistics, and we've seen the organization grow in leaps and bounds. And today, it's such a pleasure to have Toyin come on the Adventures to tell us the stories of this entrepreneurial journey. So welcome on the Adventures, Toyin.
Hi, Kunle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Really excited to be here, and it's good to connect with you again, actually.
It's really good, right? Good memories. I can remember our days back in PNG in those days, and some of the great stuff that, you did, some of the brands you led and the conversations we had and the arguments and all the back and forth. So it's good to be able to come here, and just have this very nice conversation. All right. So, like I normally say to our guests on the show, I'd like you to start by telling us a little bit about yourself on one hand and about the business. Of course, we can tell us a little bit about the scale of operations, and not just for the sake of people who wants to follow your path, but also, who knows, you probably have one or two customers or clients out there. So take this as your unpaid adverts, right, on the bill of adventure. So please, can you please tell us a little bit about what you do and what you have? Thank you.
Okay, hi. So, my name is Toyin Sanwo. As you said, I'm the CEO of Dryva Logistics. I'm the founder as well. So prior to Dryva, I'd worked in private sector. I'm in a chunk of my career. I'd worked in Accenture, worked in Procter & Gamble, of course, where, you and I met. And then, of course, I went into founding Dryva. And the thinking at the time was basically for us to solve some of the challenges. Of course, because if you're coming from FMCG, right, the role that I was in, it was commercial leadership. So your work cuts across, everything. You're working with supply chain, you're working with, of course, your marketing, you're working with research, you're working with sales, you're working with finance, it's the whole 9 yards and all that. And so you definitely have a view of things in terms of, the end-to-end operation, pretty much of the brand or the business as it were. Like we usually say, my role, you're the GM of the brand, pretty much. So it's like being the CEO of an organization, really, and so, I mean, logistics was something we then, decided to take a foray into. But what's interesting, I think it's very interesting to state this, is that we didn't actually start out with logistics initially. We actually started out as a driver resourcing company at the time. So what we were trying to build at the time, and this is a very interesting perspective to give, because I mean, just yesterday on my LinkedIn, or 2 days ago, I wrote something there titled "Allow Yourself Evolve, Pivot." Right. So we started out as a driver resourcing company. What we wanted to solve for at the time was allow people to be able to hire drivers, on an on-demand basis. So for when you need it, for as long as you need it. So if you need a driver for a day, for a month, a week, something very flexible, and then you still get good quality of drivers. That's where we started from, back then. But then, and this is also very interesting. I'm a strategy person. That's my forte. Even in my consulting life, that's what I was doing, and so one thing I naturally tend to do is that when I come into an industry, I come into a space, I'm always sniffing around to see, what's the value chain, what part of the value chain should we be playing in? Are we optimally positioned and all of that? And when we started Dryva, I think, honestly, about 3 months into the operations, I realized that, look, we could actually be doing a whole lot more. And then, unfortunately, of course, COVID, also happened at the time. And it also even made more obvious, look, there's just a lot more value to add and value to capture, and that's how, the journey for Dryva Logistics started. So I think that's just by way of background, So yeah, I'm a full-fledged supply chain expert. Today, at Dryva, what do we do? So we provide what we call end-to-end integrated logistics solutions. We help companies, if you want to put it in layman's language, we help companies manage, at their logistics. What we believe is that companies shouldn't actually do logistics, right? It's not their core business. If you're a manufacturer, manufacturing is your core business. Sales is the core business. Marketing, which is brand building, is your core business. Logistics should not be done. But of course, what you find, not just in Nigeria actually, but globally, is that people and companies tend to then do logistics because the capacity isn't so much available in the market. It's not, even if it's available, it's not at the kind of scale at which they need it. So you need logistics you need to scale logistics very fast if you want to scale distribution and stuff like that. So, but that's what we do. So we're saying to companies, outsource your entire logistics. Let's manage it. That's our own bread and butter. That's our own core business. So we do this by way of couple of products and services. So we do transportation, which is at the core of the business. We do also warehousing solutions, which we call distribution centers, fulfillment centers. Maybe we'll talk about it down the line. And also now we do a bit more of freight forwarding. So that's just pretty much the definition of what we do at Dryva.
Wow. Thanks. I think I'm a bit curious about the whole pivoting thing, right? So I remember vividly when we were having the conversations back in the day, and you didn't tell me so much, but at least you mentioned something around the fact that you wanted to do some kind of this driver, outsourcing thing. And I know a few colleagues that you did it for. Correct. Right? When you stepped out, right? But I'm just wondering how that whole concept formation kind of evolve. I know we need to talk about the scale of what you currently do, right? But before we do that, can you just double click into how did you get to that point where you felt like there is a whole lot more, right, within this space beyond providing drivers for people on an on-demand kind of basis, right? We can do transportation, we can do warehousing, how did that idea come, right? How did it evolve? How did you kind of quantify it? We'll get to the quantification later, but I think let's talk about how the idea came forth in the first place.
Okay, very interesting. So I think at the time, there were a couple of considerations. So, like I said, in every industry, you have what you call the industry value chain, and as a as a CEO, as a strategy, like I said, I'm a strategy person. Yeah. You have to always talk value chain. You always have to think value chain. You need to know where exactly you are on the value chain. What value are you adding? What value are you capturing? So what happened at the time, was that uh, I was engaging with a couple of people, on a clientele basis level, and seeing what people were also doing. So when you look at mobility, because what we do today actually is mobility and logistics, really. So when you look at mobility and logistics, you find that you have, for example, the e-hailing platforms like the Ubers, that's the e-taxi hailing platforms. So the Ubers of this world. You also have the e-bus hailing platforms. At the time, we had a company, Plenty Waka. We had even Shuttlers, at the time. The Shuttlers was relatively also young and new at the time, for example, and so you had that. Then, of course, you had driver resourcing for companies like that. Of course, you would want to provide, services, to such companies. And of course, you then had individuals, but then, particularly also as COVID then struck, one of the things that was very important at the time when we were making the decision was we wanted to play in a market where demand outstrips supply. And to be very honest with you, that for me is a very core fundamental principle that I look at, when it comes to business, in terms of portfolio creation, in terms of product, in terms of service, and anything. And I can tell you that I think anything that you would find me do in my entire lifetime, I don't think you would find me in a place where the supply, outstrips the demand. I think for me, that was one of the fundamental things that was a factor for decision for us at the time. So we looked at, the entire space and we said to ourselves, okay, where is that place where demand for sure outstrips supply, wherein you can almost not fully saturate the market because the demand is just there. And what we currently do logistics, was a clear area and direction where there was a lot of value, to be added. And even as I still speak with you today, it's still so demand outstrips supply in the sector that I play in. That was just one of the fundamental things amongst others. But I think if you ask me, that was a very fundamental one. And truth is, once you get it right at that level, you can only get it right, from there, because what will happen is that, you are not trying to force fit a solution into the market. There's already a ready market. So it's just for us to supply that market. And the question then is how much supply can we bring to the market to fulfill, the available demand? So for me, if you ask me in very simple terms, that was a major underlying, factor at the time.
Thanks a lot for sharing all that you share, all you shared, how you kind of, come to the point where you identify the opportunity within that value chain, right? So you're playing within a space, within that industry or within that sector, but you're not just looking at that alone. You're looking at the entire value chain, and looking at that closely, you're able to see one or two opportunities. Now, the big question, number one question I will ask two questions so you can answer them together. The question is, if you hadn't started out, right, with the initial concept of providing drivers for organizations or individuals on an on-demand basis, right, would you have been able to identify this bigger, because this looks like bigger than even what you started out with, right? Would you have been able to identify that? Number one. Then number two question to follow up on that would be, now looking at what you do today, right, can you share a little bit about, the scale of your operations, the, industries, the, deliveries and the organizations, if you can, just a little bit of that, and then we go from there.
Okay, let me start from the first one. And it's such a beautiful question. And, even I have thought about it on my journey, and, and it's a very simple answer. The answer is no. I think that, and okay, fine. I don't know if we can talk about Christian stuff, right? Because I'm Christian, so if you would permit me. So, I think one of the things God told me, and this is the first time I'm actually sharing this publicly, when I was stepping out, there were certain things He told me. And the funny thing about my conversations with God, I'm very big on God, by the way. The interesting thing about my conversations with God is all of them, I know exactly where I was, what I was doing at the time when He told me those things. But one of the things He told me, amongst the things, right, was the fact that He said, there are things you're going to do on the field that you do not have a clue about. He said, but when you step out there, I will show it to you. And I think that that's exactly what happened. I don't think that, look, you don't even want to talk about, how I started this journey. Because some things are so personal, I can't even share in public, right? In terms of the risks that I took at the time, and the guts and just the conviction, right? I don't think, and I think the way I also was, just to go back a bit, the kind of person that I am, I don't know if it's more, I can multitask, but I find that usually I'm very focused. I'm singularly focused. So if I'm working in an organization, for example, I don't really know how to do things on the side. It's either I'm working here and that's just it. So I thought that, look, if I was still working, right, at the company, I wouldn't be able to develop all the stuff, And so if I didn't step out, I don't think I would have seen this. Simple and short. There are things that you see just by virtue of you being in a market, right? Because when you're there, you're interacting with stakeholders, you're assessing the numbers, you're looking at the gaps in the market, and you're saying to yourself, oh, there's something here. Oh, there's an opportunity here. So if you didn't come out, you wouldn't even see, you're seeing it because you're there, right? So from the outside, there's some things that you would not know. There are things I know about, our sector, today that if I was an outsider, I would have absolutely no clue about. So to answer your question, I don't think I would have seen, as much this scale. You may have had a sense of it, but I think, you coming in there, fully hands on, you start to see deeper skills to what it is you're doing. Another thing I say to people and myself as well is, look, the customer has to guide you. In fact, that's that stuff I was talking about on LinkedIn, because it's very interesting that this is what I was just writing about days ago. The customer is like your compass, right? You're saying to yourself, what is the customer's need? Look, if you solve the customer's need, you cannot go wrong. You're not trying to force feed solution. So the question is, and these things even happen as you interact with customers. And one of the reasons why we also did logistics is that we had some capacity. We had capacity to do it, right? So, and then there's a market, we have the capacity. Let's go in and do it. So I think that's just to answer your question. If I wasn't in here, if I had not put my legs in the water, I don't think I would have seen this big, particularly this big because, whatever we're doing today, I think we're still at day zero at Dryva because there's so much that is ahead. I see it's like, it's so clear as day, right? In terms of what we need to do in this country. We need to step change logistics in this market, not just us as Dryva. I'm talking the entire sector. Not everybody in private sector, different startups. We all need to come together and actually solve logistics and solve it at a very deep and wide scale. So that answers that question. Now to talk about what we do, in terms of the scale of what we do. So we have, like I said, we have, for example, warehousing solutions. For warehousing, we have facilities as big as 10,000 square meters. We have as small as 1,000 square meters. And these are actually real life. I'm not talking about ideal. These are real life, facilities.
There are business plans.
No, not business plans. The other thing is that we have a spread. Today we have facilities where we can serve. Not all of the facilities are optimized at the moment. So, but we have facilities. I said to clients, if you need a warehouse facility in any part of Nigeria today, at least 20 plus cities, commercial centers, we can actually provide it. So, and what we do, for example, is that we do the end-to-end solution. So we're not a rental company. You can't come to Dryva to say, I want to rent a warehouse, and then you will be managing that warehouse by yourself. We don't do rental. So what we do is the entire solution, which means that we take the entire headache of your warehousing, or what we call distribution center, off you. So the only thing you need to do is give instructions, and the cargo will come into the facility, give instructions, the cargo will go out. All of the inventory management, the administration, the security, the insurance, every single thing, the core operations, core warehousing operations, everything is managed by Dryva. So you outsource the entire warehousing, solution. That's what we do. And also we enable distribution. So we have distribution centers. What are distribution centers? As an organization, particularly FMCGs, right? You want to grow very fast, but guess what? You cannot. If a customer places an order, let's say your manufacturing plant is in Lagos, right, Ikeja, and if a customer in Kano, a customer in Sokoto places an order, how quickly can you deliver that order, right? You can't do it with centralized distribution. So even companies are starting to realize, and it's a global trend, that you need to have what you call distribution centers. These are regional hubs or market hubs that are very close to market. So for example, at my DC, we have a DC in Abuja, a large DC in Abuja. If a customer places an order for one of my clients, today, this is 2 p.m. If an order comes today, we can still deliver in Abuja, right? So that's the beauty of distribution centers. So we have the distribution centers, and then of course we have the transportation. For transportation, one of the things we're seeking to do in the coming years is to even build more depth in terms of more assets play. When I say asset play, I mean there are dynamics to it, but yeah, in terms of even help enabling the ecosystem inject more assets, because we have a significant asset gap in Nigeria. So that's one of the things we're also looking to solve, on the transportation side. On the freight side, for the freight forwarding side, if you want to move anything from Nigeria to any part of the world, or you want to get stuff from any part of the world to Nigeria, Dryva can help you do that. And also, I mean, even same thing for clients. If a client you want to buy something, in a region, let's say Russia, you want to buy from Ukraine, we can pick from your manufacturer's door or supplier's door in that location and deliver to your door in your factory here in Nigeria. So these are the things that we do today that encompasses our integrated logistics solutions.
So that is no longer unpaid, right? So I will send you the invoice for that. I just changed your mind. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I mean, super helpful to be able to see the scale of what you do, right? Because I'm sure there are people out there who probably need some of these solutions and they don't know that they exist right within our shows in Nigeria, right? And that you can also help pick things from even outside of the country into the country. So this is really very good. Thanks a lot. Now, if I go back a little bit, Tony, memory lane, right? I know that you are, in PNG, right? I think we're going Bantu or something. I'm sure you were making decent living, right? And you're
very decent too. It's not decent. It was particularly the opportunities.
So you can understand, you were probably on the fast track to something way bigger than what you are even doing that then. Your brand wasn't doing badly, right? And I don't want to get emotional about the brand right now, but you get what I mean. Your brand was doing great. You were doing well. You had great managers. You're earning quite well, right? And so imagine our shock, not just mine, but even other colleagues, when when you woke up and you said, okay, and I heard, I was like, Toyin is leaving. I was like, you can't be. And I remember calling you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember calling you and saying,
"You're emotional right now. I'm not gonna lie."
No, what are you doing? What's going on here? And I remember, I think I was doing my distributor operations role back in the day, and you're like, Kunle, I got it covered. Don't worry. I can't say so much, but I got it covered, and all of that. Now I went all that way to ask this question. Right. And I know that you've alluded to the fact that you are inspired, right? You got some inspiration from God and all of that. And that is great. But I also know that you're a strategy person, like you said earlier. You're right, that you put numbers to, paper or pen to paper and you articulate numbers. Now, even the initial idea that you got, how did you do some kind of quantification behind it? Right. And how did you go about that process? Now, without complicating it, just for an average person out there who wants to start a business and wondering, how do I ensure that this makes commercial sense? Now, this is what I mean. Now, so I know that you left PNG to start the, on-demand driver, servicing kind of thing on one hand. On the other hand, you pivoted from that into even logistics. For all of this to happen, you must have done some kind of quantification of opportunity. You remember what we call size of price back in the day, right? So how did you go about some of those process, right? On one hand, because thinking about it now, you may spot an opportunity within the value chain, but it doesn't mean that opportunity is worth your time. Do you get it? Or what everything you're leaving behind to go? Do you get what I mean? So there are opportunities we choose our poison, right? We look at some and we say, no, I don't want to do this because it's not worthwhile for me. It's not worth everything I'm leaving behind. So I think You get the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of things. So the first thing at the time was, uh, what is the market saying? All right. When I say what is, I'm a big believer. Of course, my past life also, I did a lot of consumer work. So I'm a very big believer in what's the consumer need, what are the consumer gaps, and what are the customer gaps. So one of the things, in fact, what you would find is when you look, and I think it still persists today. I'm not so sure if it's much better. You find that when you talk to quite a lot of people want drivers, right? And there's always the complaint about, and even, I mean, look, we're a logistics company, right? So that's one of the biggest headaches, and it's not even just a Nigeria thing, it's a global thing, right? Drivers can be quite a menace, so you always have that, people want great drivers, people who are level-headed, verified, and a lot of all the stuff like that. So one of the things we had tried to do at the time was to see, how big is this demand? But something that's just very interesting, I just wanted to say is this. The thing about enterprise is that you never know the entirety of what is possible. How do I mean? And also, not just the entirety of what is possible, you also don't even, sometimes you even think you've articulated your risks, right? But there's some risks you can and could never account for. COVID is one of such risks. I think now we can talk about things like COVID in the future for planning, but at the time, I mean, nobody would have believed that the time would come, we'll all be wearing our masks. I'm sure if we show our children, and grandkids, another 20 years or 10 years down the line, they'll be like, what are you guys talking about? Like, you mean you guys are, they won't even, they will just sound like, what do you mean? So, I mean, COVID, for example, no matter how much great plans we thought we had, COVID crashed everything. I was listening to another person some days ago, someone who currently is in the sector, a company, that does driver outsourcing, and he was sharing, and it just sounded very familiar. He said, look, our business went to zero, and that's exactly what happened, because what happened, COVID happened, people didn't want proximity. Though everybody became, I don't want anybody close to me. We almost became xenophobic, right? So my point is this. So you can do all of the planning. You need to also ask yourself, what are the risks? Do you have the risks covered? Are you able to cover those risks, for example? So back to what we were looking at the time. One, of course, was the demand. What's the problem, first and foremost? Now, the other question, I remember back in business school, something we used to talk about was willingness to pay. So you can say that there's a problem, right? But is the consumer willing to pay? So people can have problems and they're not willing to pay. They are fine to manage. So the question is, exactly. So it's a problem. Yes. How big is the problem? How many people have this problem? That's what you have to think about. Is there a problem? Okay, yes, there's a problem. Is it a perceived problem? Is it an actual problem? Is it a solution? Is it something we would die to have? Or is it a nice? There are two different things. There's a die to have solution. There's a nice to have solution. If you have a die to have solution, they will rush you, right? If you have a nice to have solution, they won't think about it. So is it a die to have or a nice to have solution? And then what is the consumer pain point? What are the pain points, right? And even when you also map out the consumer pain points, it also helps in your product design. Okay, so this is like the consumer journey. These are the pain points that they have along these lines, and then we can solve for it. And even when you're solving, the question is, how big is that pain point? Because there are pain points that are so small and negligible. There are pain points that are huge. And how do you define a huge pain point? How many people are articulating that as the pain point? So how big is the market? So you don't want to play in something where only 10 people want to buy. Of course, I mean, there are certain situations where 10 people make sense. When you're playing in the B2B space, for example, B2B, 10 companies is a lot. If there are major companies, 10 is a lot. But when you're talking B2C, that's business to consumer, then you're talking actual scale, outright scale. So what is this? How big is that market? How big is that demand or need? So for me, those are the things that are very, very, they may sound very simplistic, but they are fundamental as you can think when it comes to trying to set up a business or design a product or sell to a consumer. So once you've defined that, okay, fine, there's a massive size. The question is, what value can we create? How much can we charge for it? If it's a product, how much can we charge for it? If it's a service, how much can we charge for it? The other question you ask is, what's the cost to serve? So can we charge for this product or service at a profit? Or is it something that we can't charge for profitably? The other question you ask yourself is, who is solving it for the customer today? Because if people are already solving it and they're okay with it, then what exactly would then be your value proposition? Then you also talk about value proposition. So what is our value proposition? Why should, even today as Dryva, we keep asking ourselves that question. Why should customers buy from us? Why shouldn't they go to company X or company Y? So what is the unique value proposition that we have? Do we solve this problem? Yes, this is the problem. Are we solving it in a very unique way? And not just unique, because it's not enough. Innovation is beautiful and brilliant, but innovation is just what it is until customers and consumers can pay for it. So if your customer is not ready to pay for your innovation, they're just wasting your time and money and investor resources. So you ask yourself, are the customers willing to pay? How much are they willing to pay? And like we used to say, willingness to pay must be very high. This is the value, then this is the willingness to pay. Your willingness to pay must be so high that customers see the value in it. If your willingness to pay is low, then you're wasting your time. If it's a very nice, are they willing to pay? If the willingness to pay is low, there's no point. It means that I might even like your solution, but am I willing to pay? The other thing is, why should I pay for it? The other thing also is even the affordability. So this solution or this product, okay, what price point am I putting it at? Then there's also the market segmentation. Okay, who are those who will buy it? And not everybody will buy your product. If you're trying to sell to everybody, there's some products you can sell to almost everybody, So, but like air, if you could package air, you will sell it to everybody, right? But there's some products that you then need to tier the market. What's the customer or consumer segment? Which segment do I want to focus on? And then you also look at their affordability. What can they pay? So quite a lot of things, to be very honest, goes into it. But like I said, even if you've done all of this consideration, you also need to ask yourself, what are the risks that are involved? I'm doing a design currently. I can't talk about it though, but I'm doing a design currently for one of our products that we've actually even brought it to the market. We're working on partnerships. I'm asking myself so many questions in the process. Same thing I've just told you now is what we're doing again. We're looking at it to say, okay, what's the size? And sometimes you even do what you call pilots, right? You pilot something. So you do it in a very small scale to test the markets and test the response. There's something we say in marketing, sense and respond, right? So you've launched a product. Let's say you're running a pilot. I've launched this pilot. What is the market response to this pilot? A couple of things will happen. You would probably learn that, this solution, the consumers like it, but they would want you to add XYZ for them to be able to buy it. Or this solution, they don't need it. In fact, sometimes you can even launch, and this is talking about people, you might launch something and think that is what the consumers need. But you then find out that that's not what they are buying. They are buying a subset, of that thing. So, like I usually say, I think in summary, the consumer is your compass. The consumer will help you find your way in the journey. So I think that when you found an enterprise, you don't know the entirety of what it can become. You find out after you started, and you find out through interactions with consumers. Consumers will always tell you what they need. The only question will be, are you paying enough attention to it? Yeah.
Wow. Thanks a lot, Tony. That is loaded, right? That is the kind of, like 2-3 minutes that you kind of have to listen to again and again and again and again for you to get everything that is packed in there, right? So thanks a lot for sharing all of that you shared. It really, really inspired. Now, if I go back again, just still on that question. Now, so you are in P&G, you're going to leave, and having a good chunk of this knowledge already, because you have a background in consulting. Now you work, for P&G and all of that. Now, I'm not sure, did you send that survey to potential clients or, customers to say that, guys, are you guys feeling any pain around this area? I have experienced it as an individual, but I want to check that this is meaningful. Or did you just speak to some 1 or 2, 3, 4 colleagues out there to say, guys, I'm checking this out. What do you guys, or how did you go about that? Because I'm not sure if you put some huge budget behind market survey to understand. You might have done that, market research, sorry, you might have done that, but what exactly did you do? And if I don't have a huge budget to do a lot of market research, what can I do as an alternative, at least to give me a sense of what is out there?
Okay, so I think the myth, and I call it a myth, people tend to think that market research has to be very big, has to be grandiose and large scale. I don't think that's correct. And look, a survey is a form of research. So if, for example, And I've seen surveys, you and I, everybody sees surveys from time to time, people who are trying to launch something and then they send it to an audience that they think maybe is a representative, of that market that they're trying to serve, right? Exactly. So, I mean, it's as simple as just sending out surveys to people. Of course, how you design that survey also matters for you to generate and glean insights, so sending surveys to a number of people who are potential users, right, is in itself a form of research. Let me go a bit back into, my brand days. So one of the things, and I think this is the beauty, of even FMCG, right? One of the things, and I keep saying consumer, I can't say it enough, Kunle. To be honest, like the consumer is at the center. I was thinking, just this morning I was meditating on something, I can't remember what it was. And I was saying, in that meditation, like, look, the consumer, when they say the customer is king, that thing is so true. Even your investor respects the customer because the customer is the one that brings the money from the pockets to pay all of us. The customer pays our salaries, right? They pay for everything that we do. So the consumer has to be at the center, right? So what you do, for example, in a product, I'm talking the physical product. Somebody can say, I have a physical product. How do I know whether this product works, blah, blah, blah. What you simply need to do is, okay, why don't you meet people? You have different forms of research. There's focus groups discussion where you put together a homogeneous group. Sometimes it could be heterogeneous depending on what you're looking for. But you put together a homogeneous group of people, you ask them questions, try to understand what they currently use. Are there limitations in what they currently use? How are they interacting with the product? How are they utilizing the product? How are they purchasing the product? How are they making purchase decisions? Where do they shop, for example? What do they look for in pricing? When they're at the shelf, how do they interact with the products on the shelf? And so many things. Even the brand color, the brand packs, does design form a part of how you make a decision on, stuff like that. So you can do surveys, your typical surveys. And thanks to Google and other platforms, they love electronic surveys. You can send out to people, they respond. And the beauty of surveys also, depending on that's why I said how you design a survey also matters for you to glean insights. If you design it in a way that allows you curate data from across a sector of people you've sent it to, you can actually now start to see the weight of the data. For example, data will show you that, maybe you were trying to test for X and 50% of people said it was important. Another 50 said it was not important. That's a 50-50. If 100% say it's unimportant, and maybe that thing you thought that was the key value proposition you were trying to sell, you can already see that this thing, there might be a problem here, because the people you've brought together in that survey, there is sample. That's how research is done. It's a sample size. That's why it's called sample size. There is sample, a reflection of the wider market that you want to sell to. So that's one. Surveys, yeah. The other one, of course, I believe a lot in focus groups. Another thing, if it's a B2B business, for example, talk to actual businesses that you want to sell to. So who are the clients I want to sell to? This sector. Can you find the decision makers or the users? So in every organization, there's what we call the user team or the user organization. These are the people that actually, there are two kinds of people in companies, or even three. There is the user, there is the buyer, there is the approver. A lot of times, the closest person to the products or service is the user. The person who is buying may not even, he just knows that whatever the user tells me is what I will use to make a decision. So the question is, can you find the users within the companies you want to serve or potential companies, interact with them, talk to them, engage them, and they will tell you what the problem is. Let me use logistics as an example. If you go to any logistics company, you're talking, okay, I want to sell logistics, I can guarantee you one of the biggest things you will hear is, I need, can you provide me with transportation? Because companies want to expand, they want to expand the service, right? Can you provide me with transportation? Okay, so let's assume you speak with 10 people, who are in that space. And let's say you had 3 products you wanted to sell. And out of those 10 people, 7 or 8 tell you, this product A is what is my biggest pain point. Then the remaining 2 tell you, this product B. You already know that when it comes to size of price, those 7 are giving you some pointer as to where the market might be. So another thing you do in research is that once you found that sample, sometimes you want to revalidate to say, okay, could it just be a fluke? Then you talk to another set. If you now do another set of 10 and you're still getting another, in fact, maybe you now even got 80% saying that, this service A or pain point A is my biggest pain point. It's a pointer to you as to, it looks like this is the gap in the market. Then you can now come to the commercial side to say, okay, how can I solve this? What do I need to solve it? How can I solve it efficiently and effectively, and stuff like that. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's just, practical ways that I have seen that works.
And thanks a lot, Toyin, for sharing that. My assumption is these things you've shared with us are not just ideas. These are things you have done, right? In one form or the other.
Absolutely.
In quantifying, do you understand?
Let me give you an example. When you say things we've done, see, we've gone to Kano. In my FMCG days, for example, we go to Kano, we go and sit in the consumer's house to listen to the consumer use my products. I'm not making a design on products because of how I feel about. It's not about feelings. Products are not about feelings. I mean, see me, I'm so consumer centric. I'm customer centric. It doesn't matter what I love doing. The question is what is important to my customer or consumer. So we've gone to places like Kano, gone to Ibadan, gone to Kaduna, where I don't even understand their language. And we go in, we do consumer immersions. We sit down with them. Sometimes we do days, we do a week in a consumer location. We sit down, we look at their interaction with the product, we engage to them. And, it can be so detailed. I won't go into stuff, right? Like we try to see the heartbeat of the consumer. What is important to them? Are they buying my product? Are they deselecting my product? If they are deselecting, why are they deselecting my product? We even go to the trade to understand what is happening in the trade. Are customers picking it up? That's the distributors. Are they, so these are real life things. I'm not talking about theory. These are things we've done in the real life to make decisions on products that you see on shelf or you see in the market.
Wow. So many things to unpack, Toyin, and I'm sure that a lot of people are learning or are going to learn a lot from what you've said. Because, at times what I've noticed when I talk to business people, especially small business people, is people feel like I have this idea, it solves a problem for me. There should be a market in there.
Build it, they will come. That's what it's called.
Right. And yes, there is an element of that. There is an element of truth in that, right? There may be something in there, but it's not just about something. It's about, is what is there big enough for you to sell everything you have or leave that job? And do you get what I mean? So, that aspect of it needs to be thought through. Otherwise, yes, some clients will come, some customers will come, but is it going to be, meaningful enough for you to say that you've made the right choice? So for me, that's why, I keep double clicking on this because, and, to your point, consumers are the king, right? Shoppers are a gateway to consumers because one thing is for somebody to shop it, another thing is for somebody to use it, right? So at the end of the day, we want the people that use it, right? At what we call is a second moment of truth, right? To have an experience that will make them feel like using it again and again and again, right? And for me, it speaks to all of the points you've made around ensuring that this adds a lot of value to consumers. And if that happens, then we don't need to be so worried about, return business or scale.
Selling becomes very easy because what they need.
Because selling becomes easy, right? And I can speak for salespeople, right? At times, the struggle we have is people like you who haven't done their job well, right? They just give me a product to go and sell. And, I get out there, I put it on the shelf, but I refuse to leave, right? Because there is a missing link. No, somebody has not done that. They've not thought through around what is really required, needed, or even bringing it to market at the price that the consumer can pay for. The whole equity thing, the whole thing around affordability, availability, and all those kind of stuff, right? So thanks for all that you have, shared. I think we're just getting started. I hope we have enough time to do our interview today. But, my next question is around, it's still related in a sense, but so you mentioned something when you were speaking earlier around segmentation of consumers and customers and all clients and all of that. And I know today that you probably make some choices. You've made some choices around who you want to serve, right? And how you want to serve them, which basically is the core of what strategy is, right? Making choices around some of these things, right? What we do for, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you can double click a little bit into that in terms of, you were setting out, right? Either initially or later on, when you were pivoting into something different, did you do some of this exercise? Did you kind of identify a few organizations or a particular sector that you wanted to serve? And what was the thinking behind that? And if you can share a little bit about maybe the sector or the sector that you zeroed in on, I think that will be helpful for our viewers or listeners.
Very interesting question. So indeed, I'm a big believer in segmentation and tiering the market. And interestingly, when it comes to market tiering, I've seen this even on the client side. So I've seen it on our side. I've seen it on the client side. There's some clients that actually, when it comes to suppliers, they have tiers of suppliers. So not all, there's this the animal farm, George Orwell. He said all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. So you find that even on the client side, yeah, they also have tiers of suppliers. They have the tier 1, they have the tier 2, they have the tier 3, and there are different things that are going into how they tier. And I mean, it's also fine for you as a company to say, okay, these are my tier 1 clients, these are my tier 2 clients, and these are my tier 3 clients. So for us, for example, look, we're not here to serve everybody. One thing I already know, and I knew even from the get-go, is that we will not serve everyone. So, like I said, there's a project we're currently working on. And in fact, working on that project just yesterday while I was looking at some of the numbers. And I said to myself that, you know what? More than ever, as we go into the next 5 years, we'll even be more deliberate about who we serve. Because we certainly want to serve you with all of our hearts. We want to do painstaking logistics work for companies where we can actually come in and add proper value. And the truth is, like I talked about willingness to pay. If you don't want to pay for that value, I don't have to serve you, But guess what? The companies who pay for that value will see it in their operation, right? They say pay peanuts, hire monkeys. That's fine. So you don't want to pay, it's okay. And you see, that's another thing you need to be fair about. The question is, why are they not paying? So is it maybe they don't see enough value? That's a possibility. Or there are other people who are willing to do it for less. And it's okay. I know the people that will do it. And, and I'm saying this because from where I sit today as a logistics executive, I see the entire market end to end, right? And in fact, this particular work I'm doing, I've even gone much deeper into the market, and I'm seeing better why we have the issues we have in Nigeria in logistics. And somebody has to solve it, no doubt. So for me, one of the things I'm committing myself to is, doing some of that work in terms of solution. I'm seeing why we're having the issues, why we're having some, I don't want to even talk about some of the issues we have in the sector, and so it's clear why you will have these issues. So, but the question is, these issues need to be fixed. If you want to run an efficient organization, a global company, you need to fix this problem. Even for you as a supply chain director, a supply chain leader, the question is, how big is the problem for you? Maybe it's not a big problem. So let me give you an example. If I say that, you want to move cargo, you want to transport your cargo from point A to point B. And the question is, how quickly do you need to move that cargo? So one company can move that cargo within a day. Another company can move that cargo 2 days. Another company can move that cargo 3 days. Another company can move that cargo, I kid you not, 2 weeks, 1 month. Now, you see that between that 1 day and 1 month, what you have in between is just a set of inefficiencies. So some of the price we're paying, for example, in the logistics sector today is just gross inefficiencies left, right, and center for different reasons. So we are now seeing, how can we really roll up our sleeves and solve some of these challenges? It will come at a cost, of course, but the companies to whom delivering in a day is important are the people I will target. If my solution is 1 day, so there's no reason for me to have a 1 day solution and I'm trying to sell it to a company that doesn't mind that thing being done in 30 days. I'm just giving an example. I don't think companies want to. I'm just, So I would then focus on the people who want 1 day. The conversation is easier. The sale is easier. The values and the values, there's value alignment. The value I create, the value they want. There's an alignment. So therefore, purchase is easy. Sales is easy. So segmentation is very, very important. You must ask yourself, how have I and there are different ways to segment, different ways to segment your market. So how do I want to segment, basically, for example, based on pricing, okay, or that's why you have things like, in the consumer balance, it will be, things like affordability, right? Price to pay. Can they pay? People who can pay, for example, and not just even pay, there's pay. Some people have money. I think money is not the same equivalent as willingness to pay. I can have money, I don't want to pay you, even when I know that you are giving me something, right? So
You come
that's why
to the value equation. What do
exactly.
you think
So
you're
that's why
getting?
this is why then when people say, "Oh, these are premium clients," or that's how you arrive at it. Oh, my premium clients are the clients that can pay me good value for what I do, and what you then do, for example. And there's also a way you design. I'm very big on products, maybe because that's my background, right? On product design. So you have to factor your design into some of these things. So if I'm going to serve a premium client, that is where you use the height of your innovation. I will go all the way to innovate for that client, give them solutions that are out of this world because they can pay for it. But you see, that solution I'm giving to that client, I might come to a tier 3 client. I don't like to use the word tier 3 client, but you get what I'm saying. I might come to a client, let me still use tier. If I'm giving a tier A client something, and I'm doing all the innovation, all the vavavoom, the guy is impressed, he wants to pay. But you see, all that solution, it might also be important to him because his business is at a point where it needs that innovation. But I might be talking to a tier 3 client who does not need that much innovation in his business. So if that product I designed for the tier 1 customer is what I'm designing for the tier 3, there's a problem. It cannot pay me. So if my strategy is to go after, I have a tier 1 product, but I'm running after tier 3 customers, then there's a problem because you will not sell. And you'll not say, oh, well, maybe my product is the issue. It may not be your product. Maybe what you need to do is to tweak that product, take out certain elements, and then put together something that is just good enough. There are certain customers and even consumers that just want just the bare benefit, just good enough. I don't want any pampara, just something basic, and I'm okay.
Toyin, once again, thanks a lot for answering the questions around, customer segmentation. That's quite instructive to be able to, define, who our customers are and who, we're not going to serve, because I think to a large extent that will help drive some kind of focus, right? And attention, and, help us in serving the people who have chosen to serve in the right way, in the way that really, represent value for all parties, right? And then we have some kind of win-win kind of partnership and relationship with them. Now, I want to step back a little bit to talk about what we often hear around, new startups, right? And if you talk to 1,000 people today that wants to start a business, right, 900 of them will tell you, I had a great idea, I had a brilliant idea, but money. Do you get it? Everything was tidy, everything was ready, tight business, but money. And then by the time I raised the money, something has gone wrong. So I just want to hear from you how you kind of solve the funding problem. Now, was it really solved by funding, or was it something that you explored? You were going out. How did you, the first set of, I don't know what your model was when you were leaving P&G for the, outsourcing part of the operations back then, right? So I don't know how much you had to invest in terms of either hiring drivers or buying cars or whatever, all those kind of stuff. It would just be good to know how you navigated that curve back then around funding and stuff like that. Or did you get funders, investors, and all of that early? It would be good to hear your thoughts.
Okay. Okay. So funding is very important, no doubt. You need funds. In fact, when you sneeze, it's money. But I think I'm trying to see how to put this. I don't think one should also think that if I don't have, of course, you also need to know how much you need to get started. That's very important. I think that's very basic. What do I even need to get started? So part of what you do in terms of trying to, do anything at all, any founder, is to say, what resources do I need? Of course, what targets do I have? For example, say year 1, year 2, and then to deliver this target, what resources do I need? And it also depends on the kind of business. It depends on the frequency of your receivables, how quickly, when you sell, do you get your money immediately? If it's a product now, and you're selling directly to the consumer, the moment you sell, you're collecting the cash, right? So if it's service, maybe it's a 90-day payment term, is it 60 days, is it 10 days, is it 2 days, is it 1 day, is it cash on delivery, stuff like that. So you also have to factor that into knowing how much you need, because you will definitely need a particular base that you can then now build on. So it could be this X amount, and then you can keep rolling over that X amount as long as it keeps coming back, with something on top. So funding is key. So you need to know at least what you even need to get started. So for us, what we did, we've done a lot of bootstrapping, at the company, and it's not the easiest path or route to go, for sure. The truth is, when I look at companies that have done some good raises as well, funding is very important and good and helpful. Funding can help you grow very fast. But what is people don't talk about often is also the fact that it could be a two-edged sword. Funding can make you grow very fast, and funding can also make you die very fast. Yeah. Like I said, it's often not talked about. I mean, the truth is, overall, net is a good thing, no doubt. Because, if you have great intentions, great ideas, great product, great demand, if you have funding, then you can drive scale. So it's logical, and why I said that is because sometimes there's a tendency to be so overly focused on the funding, this thing that is because I don't have the funding that I'm not doing X. So sometimes you've seen companies that got so much money, and then the problem with so much money too is that you don't think enough if you're not careful, because you become mental. Thank you. Money becomes the solution. So there's an issue here. What you're thinking of, okay, how much do you need? How much do we need to fix it? So, and that's one way you don't want to go as a company. So when you don't have too much money, when there's a problem, the question you're thinking of, how do we need to fix it? Money is not the first thing you're thinking of. The question is, what is broken and what should be fixed? So money is good, but then I just wanted to just establish that we should not be all too fixated on money. So yeah, we started off, and we're still a largely bootstrap company. Of course, we're doing raises, but doing the raises, particularly even from this year, we're coming a bit more out there. And like I usually say, we've done a whole lot at Dryva that people don't even know about, and I think this year, hopefully, we would even talk a bit more about what we've done and what we do, as a company. So yeah, bootstrapping is a way to go. And I will talk about the things people talk about, because I will talk about them in general terms. But what I want you to know is that a lot of these things I mentioned, we've actually done. I mean, not necessarily we did this, but we've done. One of them is, look, there's something our parents used to say. And let me say, my parents, specifically my mom and my dad, was raised in a very good home with solid foundation, very, very intentional parents with high values. And, one of the things we used to hear growing up is that a good name is better than silver or gold. And that thing it will never be out of fashion. It's still true today. Your biggest currency as a founder is your name, your integrity, your brand, who you are. When you walk into a room and you say you need 10 million, you say you need 1 million, you say you need 100 million, you say you need 1 billion, are there people who will put that money on the table because it's you? Now, that's not to say, because guess what? We'll talk about equity, brand equity. A lot of times when businesses start at the initial phases, the equity of the brand is not different from the equity of the founder, whether we like it or not. For a lot of businesses, there are some that are able to separate it very early, depending also on the kind of product. And so there's a lot of stuff to that. So at the beginning, a lot will be about you. People will even put money in that business, not because it's Dryva or not because it's whatever company, but because it is you, your name. So, and that's why when they talk about, and I'm trying to make this practical, because people hear things like family and friends, but hey, the reason they say family and friends is because these are people that know you and believe in you. But the question is your name good in public? Like we usually say slang. I just try to, do you have a good reputation? Do people trust you? Do people, so, I mean, do people believe in what you're doing? And I give an example, because I've worked in different places. If I talk to people, there's the integrity, there's the capacity. Oh, Toyin has social capacity. They've seen my work rate, right? Toyin is solid. Now, if it's Toyin, then it will. In fact, some people just think if it's Toyin, then it will work. Those kind of stuff. So the question is,
It's a good place.
a good place to be, yeah. So do you have a reputation? If you have a reputation, that reputation is cash. A reputation is actually cash, right? Because you can work, yeah. Reputation is cash because you can convert reputation to cash. People can drop money on the table to say, oh, I believe in you. Oh, I need XYZ for a product, and they will drop it. So at the beginning, go and look for the funds. But you see, let me quickly say this. You see, all of this is subject to you having something that works. because it's not enough to go and raise money, whether via debt or via equity. In fact, equity is even the harder one. In fact, both are hard because, I mean, who will give you money? You know, nobody would loan you now. They don't have a reputation. Already they ask for collateral and stuff like that. Guess what? Your name is a collateral. That's another thing you will find. Right? Your name itself, you should also build yourself as a person to the point where your name is actually a collateral, where people drop money just because. Let me give an example, very random example. Elon Musk. I think there was something, I'm trying to remember what it was recently. I saw about, I think it was space, right? Space, I can't remember. And he needed to raise some funds and he sent a note. This is just like, imagine sending like WhatsApp messages to a couple of people who have money. And they just said, they didn't even ask for market research, market validation, all those things we talked about. They just said, okay, what are you trying to do? It's the reputation. Oh, if this guy is saying there's opportunity here, then there's opportunity here. People rolled $1 billion check on the back of just, oh, Elon Musk said that, and I put the money in. That is where you need to even get to as an individual, right? So at the beginning, people will bank on you. People should be able to bank on you. I'm trying to do this. You will raise, sometimes your initial investors will be friends or family that I'm trying to raise this. And sometimes it's even debt funding, free of interest. Sometimes it's interest based. But where I'm going to is, even when you go and collect money, I think that's where people run into issues. Are you collecting money for a business that will generate a return? And let's be very clear about business. So business is, and that's why I like our mothers and our fathers, and some of the, when you go to places like Eko, Idumota, those people may not be so as educated as we are, but they understand the fundamentals of business. And business is so simple. Business is very simple. Profits minus, I'm hitting very simplistic terms now. Sorry. So this is the price, my selling price minus costs, or whether expense or cost of goods sold, all this complication. Let's make it simple. This is my selling price. This is the expense, cost to serve. This is the profit. That's what a business is anywhere in the world. So the moment for you to be in business, your selling price must be above your expense, because if that happens, then you have a profit. If you don't have that in whatever you're trying to do, then there's a problem. So, and it doesn't matter whether it's a service you're delivering or it's a product you're selling. The question is, will you do it profitably? And the beauty of business is that if I do it one time, how many more times can I repeat it? I've sold to one person. Can I sell to two? Can I sell to three? Can I sell to 100? Can I sell to 1,000? Can I sell to 1,000,000 repeated sales? Is it repeatable or is it a fluke? Right? So I think these are the fundamental things. So if you have the fundamentals intact such that, and that's why I love Igbo men. Igbo men are on the money. If I know that this naira and kobo, my price is higher than my expense and there will be profit, then people will give you money now. So if you borrow money, even if you borrow money at, let's say, 2% per month, the question is, the sale you're doing in that month, will you generate return that exceeds 2%? Those are the fundamentals of business, to be very honest, right? So I think that's just basically, so funding is very important. But then there are different ways to access funding. There's traditionally, there's your family and friends, people who believe in you, who know your reputation. Some of them might come in as equity holders. Some will just give you debt, interest-free debt. Some people will actually give you loans, based on interest. That's one of the places, to be honest, to start from. And the way I look at it is this. Do a business, and this is now I'm talking about business principles. Do a business that can finance itself over the long term. In fact, not just long term is far, I'm sorry. Do a business that can finance itself as early as possible. But, and I like using the example, maybe because I'm an FMCG girl, right? The FMCG is naira and kobo. There's no Turanchi, no plenty English. So the question is, this product I'm selling, if I take it to the market, will they buy it? This product is 10 naira. It costs me 8 naira total cost, because that's another part of total cost. So let's not go into the details of that. Because some people, sometimes this thing is 10 naira, but they think that the cost is 8 naira because they bought it at 8 naira. But what are the other costs you have to incur to sell? Sometimes people, a lot of things, those things might be 4 naira. So you are thinking that 10 naira and then 8 naira. No, you're actually at a loss minus 2. So let's leave that. So let's just talking about economics, just basic economics is this thing profitable? If it is, that business will pay itself and pay itself quickly. Something happened recently, just 2 days ago. I was at some place and a founder was talking about how she wanted to raise funding. And then she has spoken to maybe one or two investors, and they were giving attitude, them in quotes now, like, We're just, as you just said, well, you just left them and went to face our business. And that, they had become profitable before they even raised. And this is where businesses need to go back to. We need to all go back to the fundamentals. I know the whole startup environment with the whole, oh, don't worry, you can lead with loss making and then eventually you become profitable. That thing is not a bad thing, to be fair, if you know how to play that game and play the long game. But you see, we cannot have replete businesses that are not profitable. We will crash an ecosystem, right? So we need to have profitable businesses. We need to have businesses that by themselves can drive profit, because that's how you build sustainable and enduring businesses. So if your business can pay itself, all you just need to do is the initial capital to start. Once you sell a few units, money will start to come in that hopefully can finance itself. But of course, when you now want to do things at a larger scale, you need to raise financing, to scale. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's how I think in a robust way people can look at funding.
For me, it does, and it does a lot, right? And you've even touched on some points that, I wasn't expecting you to touch on, but thank you for touching on them, right? The place of credibility, the place of reputation, right? Like you said, reputation, credibility is currency, is capital, right? And if people trust you and people believe in you and you've proven to them over time, maybe with smaller things, right, that you're trustworthy, credible, and you have grit, anything you put your heart to, you get it done, right? The day you walk up to them to say that I need 10,000 or I need 20,000, and they are a bit more willing to, to stick it out on you, right? Not just because you're family and friend, that gives you access, but for them to even be willing to, it means that I've seen you do stuff, right? So I'm willing to take this risk on you. It may work, it may not work, but I know that you're not going to get this money and then you start ordering for, what's that thing that they say they drink these days? Oble. And you start doing, which is the issue today at times when you look at that funding ecosystem, right? Because some people get some funding rather than the good chunk of the money to good, maybe everything, if I may say, go into the business to fund that expansion or that scaling and all of that. No, the guys start living large, right? The ladies start, living large. You rent a house somewhere you couldn't have ordinarily afforded. And then do you get what I mean? And that will lead to problems eventually. So you've touched on a very important point. I like the fact that, the example you cited about Elon Musk being able to just write a note, a very simple note to some guys, and, without so much hassle, right? This does open, right, on the strength of his credibility is like leading at the speed of trust, right? If I can go back to remember that book by, the Covey, right? Leading at the speed of trust. So that's really, really very helpful. Thanks a lot for sharing that. Now, I know you've said a lot about, how you transition. No, you've not really gone into the details of how you transition from paid employment. We've touched on it, right? But, some people will consider you leaving to go and start that, a bit risky.
Yeah, it was. Actually, it was risky.
Right. A bit risky.
It wasn't a bit risky, it was very risky.
No, maybe at some point you've thought it through that. Okay, you know what? If push comes to shove, right? I speak very well. I have some experience. I still have my certificate. I've gone to LBS. Okay, that's enough backup plan. If things don't work, I'll dust my pally again, and then we'll enter market. I don't know what the thought processes are, right? Well, then when you're making that decision, but it will be good to know. For instance, when you started out on Dryva, was what you were earning higher up to what you were earning when you were back in PNG, or you had to take some pay cuts, right? That transition, right? How did you navigate it? Did you need some kind of emotional support from your parents, your friends, and how did you, from having like maybe a company car or having some privileges and benefits and compensation, as we call them, to you now, running things like probably on the street with your jeans and t-shirt, looking for, throwing proposals all over the place. how did you manage all of that psychologically? I know it sounds funny, right? But you know what I
No,
mean.
it's not funny. Oh. It's so apt, Kunle. It's so apt.
So tell us about your experience. That curve. How did you navigate it? How did you manage it? And tell us a story.
That's why I said it's a lot of risk. It's not a bit of risk. Oh, it's a lot of risk. But you see, you have to learn to bet on yourself. I mean, nobody else will bet on you. Yeah, nobody else will bet on you. When you believe that there's an opportunity here, and that's how entrepreneurs are birthed. Entrepreneurs wear coconut heads. Founders are coconut heads, and in fact, I have this friend, I actually have this friend, and I mean, he's been a founder for a long time, and man, I've not seen that guy is like a cat with nine lives, like for real. When you think that the thing is going like this, it will just come up again, and that cycle just continues, and that's really how founders can be sometimes, So for me, it was a lot of risk, quitting, and quitting. I think, I mean, I've never said this in public actually, but I think what made it even more, risky, and interesting in my own case was that at the time I was doing well. In fact, I was supposed to go on expert assignment, as a matter of fact, and I mean, look, if I had stayed, I know the kind of life I believe in, I mean, I'm not suffering, of course. I'm doing well, but hey, sometimes you look at this journey and you're like, who even sent me this? Who sent me, but, and I'm going to answer your question. I'm just trying to speak from my heart, to be honest. I think it's the thing about being a founder is the passion and the vision, and that desire to impact the earth, and it's not money. To be honest, I kid you not. To be cool, like if I talk about salary, I'm sorry, and I tell them at Dryva, people still don't pay me what I could be earning or what I was even. Yeah, you don't pay me what I could even be earning. It's far from what I could be earning, to be honest. But that money is not my priority. And in fact, I think particularly over the next 5 years, there's certain things we're going to be doing as a company that are very ambitious, that are very audacious. And I kid you not, those things are centered around how do we step change things? There are things we've complained about in the logistics industry for years, even before I was born, and they're still there. The question is, how do we step change some of these things? How can we bring in innovation, fix some of the market gaps, and let companies feel what it means to run world-class, best-in-class logistics? To be honest, that is my passion today. And that is what keeps me going, right? So, so it was a huge risk, leaving at the time. I mean, I was not fired, In fact, there were bigger opportunities that were laid up for me, And in fact, what I find interesting when I was going to leave, and I mean, it was humbling as well, is how sometimes the company has your life planned out for you. Like the company had amazing plans. Like even me, I'm like, okay, you people have all this. Like, they had really amazing plans, and I'm grateful to them for it, even though I couldn't then follow through. So it's the passion, it's that vision, it's that burning desire. The truth is, if I didn't leave, then I would still have left sometime. If I was still then, I would still have left tomorrow. There was just always going to be that, let's go out. And the thing also is the uncertainty. Look, that's why I said, trust me, it was a huge risk. The uncertainty, because you don't even know, right? What if you fail? And I think, I tell you this. And like I said, I usually, you wouldn't find stuff about me in public. I'm not a public person about what I do. I'm very private about my business, about what we do, and I think it comes from my consulting background and all of that, confidentiality and all of that, but I'm just trying to speak from my heart. You never can tell who hopefully it blesses. Look, when I was leaving, I remember a few people walked up to me and they said, look, and these are people who have worked longer than I have. And they said, see this move you're making, They are moves, and let me use an individual. Like this is a move I would want to make in my life, but there's just there's too much responsibilities. Like I salute this your courage, or like I wish I could, but my responsibilities there's just so much at stake, So a lot of times people want to do it, but trust me, Kunle, there's too much at stake for you to try. So I think for me at the time, I just felt, look, and sometimes that's another way I look at life. What's the worst that could happen? And I asked myself what the worst could be. And I knew what the worst could be. The worst could be that, okay, we try to do stuff, it doesn't work and everything packs up. And then, if we can get another job, or something like that, So, I mean, I just told myself, well, that's the worst. And I said to myself, okay, give myself 3 years, okay, fine, at least 3 years. If it doesn't, then you can get another thing to do and, stuff like that. I mean, well, I've been there 5 years now. It's still doing it, still going, So, I think, I'm not. I'm not because there's so much work to do in the logistics industry. There's so much work to do in the logistics industry. Look, I want to do work. And that's why I say Dryva is at the zero as far as Nigeria logistics is concerned, or whatever it is we can do on the continent. We want to do logistics at even a much better scale and depth. We want to make shift. Where is a seismic shift? We want to make some shifts in the market over the next 5 years. And that's what excites me and keeps me awake at night. So yes, it was tough to go. Because yes, you have everything working for you. You have, like you said, my life was sweet. Yes, now, this, and the thing about the difference is that you're not responsible for people. Now I'm responsible for over 100 human beings, but then you're not responsible for anybody, I mean, whatever you do is just you, yourself, and your family, but there's also, you and I were talking during the break about legacy. And I think that's very key for me. Look, we're not going to be in the world forever. I mean, maybe you live 100 years, or even if you live 120, it's not forever. And I just believe that everybody came here to be able to contribute something to the universe. And if all of us want to play it safe, we wouldn't have the world that we have today. So some people, and for Nigeria, for example, we need a lot more entrepreneurs to emerge. There's so much to do. Nobody's going to come and build this country from the outside. Some of us have to do that work, right? And honestly, when I left, I remember one of the things I said to my bosses, I said, look, I have a lot of work to do on the continent. And that's actually what I said. And it's true. And that's the work I'm still doing today. So yes, it was a very difficult decision. And I also think in hindsight, people will ask the question, what's the best way to live? Is there a way that works? There's no way that works. So sorry. Very to burst your bubble and disappoint you. There's absolutely no way that works. But there are probably some ways are probably better than others in terms of how much of a soft landing they give to you. So I give an example. Some people, there are two options usually that are very popular. People will say, oh, do it on the side. Then when it's giving you what your salary is giving you, then you now go. Some people will just say, just jump and do it. There's no right or wrong answer, right? For me, I was in that second category, jump and do it. And honestly, I don't think I would have still done it if I didn't do that. I think I needed to come out. It's like you take off everything and then survive. And here we are. So, but if you ask me, there's a more convenient way to do it because you also need to ask yourself how much pain. Look, entrepreneurship, being a founder, all those things comes with a lot of pain. Oh, much pain, more pain that people talk about. We all see the flashy things. And when you have the days of LinkedIn, Instagram, you see the guy who's traveling the world, maybe even fundraising, and it looks good. You don't want to know the pain. I mean, I have a number of founder friends. People cry real tears. Some of the CEOs you're looking at, flashy, they're doing well. You want to go to the behind the scene. People, men, talking about just people, I say it's women, men cry real hot tears. And that's how, look, entrepreneurship is like, it's after your soul. It takes everything from you. It takes everything from you. So it comes with a lot of pain. So you need to ask yourself, what is my pain threshold? I think it's one of the things people don't talk about enough. I'm going to start having a founder. Oh, God, you go so far. You go take Gary, you go drink Gary. Sorry, I was looking people know. That's just it's in the talk. You withdrew, Gary. Let me bust your bubble. And I believe this happens. You go and ask every founder especially if you started bootstrapping. Give yourself, no matter how much money you think you have, give yourself 6 months. It's gone. 6 months. 6 months. I kid you not. Just 6 months. Okay, let me extend it. Maybe you have your money is long. 1 year. they have finished spending. And reality don't. So in terms of how to soft land, one way of course is, of course, keep money aside. You need to have real cash. And that's why you also need to know because you need to count the cost. How much do I need? What am I trying to do? What do you want to achieve in year 1, year 2? Do you have money? If you don't get any investor, can you keep going at this thing for 1 year or 2 years maybe? It's very key. If you can't, you may want to think about it, you want to think about it. Then the other thing, I also think, if you can, I'm not one of those people who know how to do so. I don't know how to do side hustles. It's never been my thing. I never had a side hustle in paid employment. If I'm in paid employment, that's the only thing I do in my life. I give it my, and anywhere that I have worked, people will tell you that I give it my life. I mean, that's all I know how to do. But I think in hindsight, for a lot of people, the better way would be to do something on the side, really, like they say, because it gives you comfort. I mean, I know some people, for example, I know somebody who's even a manufacturer, a lady who, she's still in paid employment, she's manufacturing, and she's doing amazingly well. The business is thriving, she's making money. What that does for you is that, one, you have you're your own first investor, your own first mid-term, at least short to mid-term investor. So unlike the other one where you put capital together, then you go and start, and then you can run out of money. In this other instance, you've started. There is that money that continues to come in from this other thing you're doing, this other full-time stuff you're doing, that you can continually pump and fund. Trust me, that thing is the best comfort in the world if you can do it. If you do that, you would have a better time, with entrepreneurship. But it also depends on what you're trying to build. So there's certain businesses where you need to be hands-on. But you see, I'm also learning. Like I said, I know somebody who is a manufacturer and she's in a full-time employment, and I really admire her. I don't know how she does it. So another thing you need to do is learn and relearn and unlearn. So sometimes you think this is the only way to do it, but you realize that there are other ways to do it. And you must ask yourself, how else can I get this thing done? How else can I get this thing done? So I don't know if I answered the question, but yeah, these are my perspectives on funding, on how to start, rather, on how to get started.
Navigating that transition. Yeah. And thanks a lot for all that you shared. And I know that you've always been your ownership level has always been very exceptional. And it's not yesterday. It's not because now you started, Dryva, and then you all of a sudden, it must work. No, I think, you are, whatever you do, you've always owned it like it's your own, right? Back in and again, I talk a little bit about our history, right? The things I know the way you ran the businesses that you ran in those days and how you owned it and how you drove it and all of that. So if you're doing that now, I'm not surprised, right? And I think it comes out to, in a nutshell, right, just to try to summarize everything that I think I got from you, I think it comes out to the individual, right, and how they think, what their personal operating model is like, or what how their system is wired, right? Some people have that, call it grace, call it capacity, call it whatever you want to call it, to be able to compartmentalize their life into different things and say, I will do this like this, I will do that, and then I can combine them at different times. I will, phase this out of my mind and focus on that. And, some people can do that. And if you've listened to the conversation with Sefer around obtaining your suppliers, I think they went along that route. And, but for other people, it's not like that. For other people, whatever they want to do, right, is like, I need to be there. And I think also that the model of the business also impacts what operating model we can deploy, so to say, right? So there are jobs we all do today that you can work from home, right? But there are jobs that cannot be done from home. If you are a doctor that needs to physically examine patients, right? There is to how much you can do that remotely. Yes, there is telemedicine, there is all those kind of things now, but there are instances that get in your car, drive down and take a look, right? That is, do you get what I mean? So I think it comes out to the nature of the business, it comes out to the individual, and so it comes out to people understanding their very peculiar circumstances and being true, to who they are. You spoke a little bit about, some of the pains that founders go through. Uh, but if you have to make the choice again, Tony, right? I mean, if you have to, I'm not wrapping up now. Right? Still have a few questions to go, but I can't but help. I can help asking that question. That if you have to, knowing all the things that you know now, if you have to take that decision again, right?
He said, this question you want to ask is such a deep question. It's such a deep question, and I mean, I talk with so much passion because I love what I do, by the way. I love building businesses. So if you ask me what I love, yes, I mean, I work in logistics. Logistics just happens to be our sector. I mean, if I wasn't doing logistics, I probably would be doing a million and one other things, to be honest. I love being a founder. I love building businesses. Um, would I do it again, all over again? I honestly think yes. I just hope it would be easier then, and perhaps indeed it would be easier because I've also learned a lot, on the journey. I don't have any regrets. I mean, maybe I should start it that way. Yeah. I have zero regrets. Zero. And when I say I have zero, I'm saying this with a lot of perspective. And let me give an example. I mean, I know what my alternative life would have been. I know my alternative life. If I wasn't alternate life, maybe I call it alternate life. I've been going around the world, traveling, flying business class, being a director, being a vice president, in paid employment, creating value. Because there's nothing, I mean, that's another thing we need to address some other time. There's nothing wrong with paid employment, though. But anyway, that's another discussion for another day, So I would be balling if I wasn't doing this. And I know that. And I know the things that I have sacrificed, to do this. So if I could do it over again, honestly, I think I'd still go this route, and maybe the only thing might be I might do it better. I might have grown even faster than the growth we have today. I might have optimized better. I might have made some better decisions. Maybe I wouldn't have made certain mistakes. But let's not make any mistake about it. One of the biggest things I love about being a founder are my people. I love the people at Dryva. We have some exceptional human beings. And, I love working with them. I love what we're building together. I love the passion they come to the work with. I love what we're doing for our clients. I think for me, to be honest, the most rewarding part of this work are the people. And that's the reason why I would do it all over again. Look, what I want to do, that's why I say it's still day zero. Look, the things we want to do next are bold, they're audacious. And for me, I look forward to a time when we would have over 1,000 people who work with Dryva. Where we would have, let me say over 1,000, over 1,000, 2,000 is over 1,000, 30,000 is over 1,000, right? So I look forward to that day we would have over 1,000 people who work at Dryva, who are doing innovative work at scale, right? And you see, the reason why I say that if I were to do it over again, I would do it is because I'm also a serial entrepreneur. If I'm not doing this, there will be something else I will be doing. Look, if I speak with you, I probably have like 5 different ideas I could execute. But I mean, you can't do everything. You can't be everything, right? You have to choose one. You have to focus. You have to build depth, right? So for me, I absolutely love this life. Look, it comes with a lot of uncertainties. That's another thing you would miss when you start being a founder. In a paid environment, of course, I mean, there are uncertainties everywhere. But the difference is there's a structure that absorbs that uncertainty. When you're a founder, you're the first, the thing lands, it's like it lands on your head first, before it goes to any other person. And you know what? Look, I think one of the things you start to appreciate some of the places you've worked when you become a founder, right? Because you now start to see that, this thing is not rocket science. So, for example, it's when you're a founder, you will know the way to the printer. You will know the way to the generator. Those days, I don't even know where. When you think about it now, look, where we were, that building, I didn't even know, if all the buildings I've worked in, I didn't know the generator house was my own. I didn't even know how the printer, how they put paper in the printer. My own is you just send it, it just goes to the printer. It just, so many things work. I would take it for granted. When you now become a founder, lights will go off. The lights will go off, and so many things will happen that will shake you to your core. And sometimes when people run back, and look, I don't blame. It's like Jackpa and Jackpada. I don't blame people who become founders and they run. Look, let me tell you something. If it's not working, you need to be graceful to let it go sometimes. By the way, don't die there. You know why? They say he who lives to fight, Abi lives to fight another day or something like that. So sometimes you need to also know when he who fights to live, right? The hair fight and run. He who fight and run lives to fight another day. Thank you. I knew that English didn't make sense. But seriously, sometimes, and it's not about you being a failure. It's just that enterprise didn't work, right? And that's why I talked about pivots, knowing when to pivot. Sometimes you don't need to die the death if you pivot early enough. So you need to be in tune with the market. So for me, I've said so much. If I would do this again, if I were to do it all over again, honestly, I think I would still go this route. The question will be whether I'm doing this exact business, because it will still be something, Sha. I tell you that. But I would, if I were to do it again, I would do it again. I would. Yeah.
Your personality, I'm not sure you can't be within that, regulated paid employment kind of environment, everything already
I
defined.
can't
You just
know.
go
Who said I
and
cannot? Don't tell me I can't.
for too long. But no, like you
I'm
said, right?
restless.
If you are there after when you just begin to itch, guys, I can't. I need to back something, right? Because there are people who are wired like that. The moment you just want to back something, the idea is. Meanwhile, some other guys are not like that. Even if they have it all going entrepreneurially, right? They still want to get back into that environment where they're able to hand something, paid employment and stuff like that. That's the way I look at it anyway. I may be wrong, but I feel it has a lot to do with individuals. Like you rightly said, it's not all of us that are, kind of wired to be entrepreneurs, and it's not everybody that is wired to also be in, paid employment. Some people is good that they've done a degree of paid employment. Right, they've learned about processes and systems, and how to manage people and all of that, and then of those things, right? We learn invaluable lessons, and then we take those things into, But you touch on a point very quickly, and I think the last episode that we had also I guess also mentioned something around if you had to do it again, you will want to go, faster and go bolder, but do it in a responsible way, right? Do you agree with that statement? Faster, bolder, but be responsible, especially if you have wives and children. Got it. So I've asked the question around if you want to start afresh. Now you touched on people. Right, you touched on people, and I want, and I know you have quite maybe intense now of people, right? Not going to the specific, but you have a couple of people working for you, or working for Dryva under your leadership, and I wanted to touch a little bit on culture, right? Touch a little bit about how you define that, your hiring processes. How do you ensure that you're getting people who can buy into that vision and who are really passionate, and not people who are just trying to, we all work for organizations because we want to make want to earn and all of that primarily, but how do you transition them beyond that, earning a living, to becoming a part of a legacy, if I can frame it like that?
So I'm one of those people who would tell you that one of the number one jobs of a leader, CEO, is to sell the vision. The problem is that we think that as CEOs, we sell to the customer, and we think it's all about the customer. There's the external customer, there's your internal customer. The people who work at your company are your internal customer. So while you're selling the products to the customer, the external customer, internally you're selling the products as well, because people need to believe in what you produce, right? But more importantly, you're selling the vision, right? People need to know what you're trying to do or what you're trying to build. And you see, me, I sell. When I sit in interviews, I don't sit in all the interviews anymore, but when I sit on certain critical interviews, I sell. And I'm not begging you to join the company, but I'm telling you what we're trying to do. And for you to see the picture and ask yourself if this is the kind of place you want to be in. We may not be there yet, no doubt, but this is what we are trying to build. So I believe that that's one of the biggest jobs of a CEO. You must sell the vision to your organization from time to time, So I think, yes, I think that's very, very key. So another thing is we don't do social hiring. We've never done it, So I mean, and there are things that kill. Social hiring is my sister's brothers, uncles, nephew. I know this person. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. Your guy, this kind of thing. And these are the things that kill businesses. I mean, you need to have independent processes that run in your organization, and you yourself should not be in the way. I think sometimes I've seen founders being in the way of things. You need to learn to step back and let people do things. Trust people to do things, and watch them do it. Of course, support them, but let them do it, So for hiring from day one, we've never been about, our social hiring. We don't. In fact, let me tell you, the way it works is Olufemi, so I cannot insist on a candidate being hired in the organization, even though I'm the CEO, right? So, and I say, even sometimes when maybe a CV comes to me, maybe for a role or something, and I send to HR knows that you're not obliged to do anything about it. Not at all. Because even you as HR, before you even hire, at least you must justify why you're doing that hiring. So, because one of the things that happen with founders is that the CEO is the Lord and Master of all. So, because I'm the CEO now, right? Oh yeah, my brother's uncle's child's sister's cousin. Oh yeah, come and work. Take CV. Oh yeah, HR. Give this, and that's what crashes organizations. You and I were talking during the break about legacy. One of the biggest issues we have in this part of the world is that we do not have legacy businesses, and that's a pain. We have businesses that die the moment the owners die. I don't know how we're going to solve it, but it's something we certainly have to solve in this market. And one of the things you see is that people don't put in structures that allow this business outlive them. And part of that structure is ensuring that you have an organization that can hire the best people without your bias as a leader. So I think that's basically another thing about culture for us is, the way the culture at Dryva works is similar to the typical everyday multinational, right? That's another thing we've, instilled from day one. And I think one of the mistakes people make is that they think that when I'm small, I should be like this. Then when we're big, we should be like that. There's a proverb, it's an African proverb, it's Nigerian, and maybe you're about to be precise. It says, whatever you will not take as a rich man, you don't take it from where you were a poor man. So that they don't say it's arrogance. Yeah. They will say, this person, no, it was always like that. Though. Even when he didn't have money, it was like that. So it's not arrogant. As companies, as founders, you need to ask yourself, and this is one fundamental thing. From day one, you must ask yourself, what kind of organization are we building? From the first day that we opened Dryva, one of the things I have said from then, and I still say it till now, is that we're building a multinational company, right? And so that informs a lot of the things that we do, right? In terms of our culture, in terms of our work, and so many other things. So you must define, and let me say this, even in strategy, right? We say strategy is a game of choices. And strategy defines who you are and what you will do. It also defines who you are not. People miss that part. And what you will not do. So sometimes you need to be clear, who are we? Because, I'm coming from a brand background. We talk about brand character when we talk about the brand. There's also the corporate character. Yeah, every organization has a character. So, for example, in Dryva, we have what we call the Dryva DNA, right? We know the DNA of who should work in the organization. And one of the things we're asking ourselves is, how can we bring in people who are like us and people who are also not like us, but like us in value? So that's very, very key. You need to define who you are, who you want to be, who you want to attract. I was at an event on Tuesday, and a founder was saying something, was very solid. She was talking about that, they could grow even faster than this. But the challenge is that for certain roles, they have not been able to find people with the right culture and value alignment. And I thought that was gold and priceless, because a lot of people miss that part. We're thinking about just bringing people, but we're not thinking about the impact that these people have on the culture. One of the things we say at Dryva, and I say this to people when I'm privileged to sit down at the hiring table, that look, the fastest way to go out of Dryva is for you to try to play politics or for you to go off values. We don't joke. No matter how skilled you are, we're going to let you go. So you must protect the culture. There's a saying, I'll wrap up here. It says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it does not matter how beautiful your strategy is, how well defined your strategy is. If the culture is wrong, it's only a matter of time you will start to see the cracks, in the wall of that organization. So for us, culture is very important. I don't even think we do it. I think we're trying, but we're not there yet. It's still a journey, for us, but it's certainly something we have chosen to prioritize as an organization, and we protect it. And I tell everybody at Dryva, it is our responsibility, our joint responsibility to protect the culture. It's not my own responsibility. It is your. And I say to people, when we hire, because look, we may unfortunately hire the wrong people. If you find that somebody joins Dryva who is not a driver person, who doesn't have the Dryva DNA, you should speak out. You should not be quiet. You should speak out. Together, we must build the kind of culture that we want in this company. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. So thanks a lot for sharing that. That is so priceless, right? I know that our time is almost gone, but I will ask you just one question and then we can wrap up on that, right? Now, so will it be a safe assumption to say that when you pivoted into the logistics part of the business versus just outsourcing drivers, would you say that was like like an inflection point for your business, or there are other inflections?
That was the major. Every other thing built on that, right? But that was the major.
Wow.
Best decision we've made.
Wow.
And like I still say, we're on day zero. We've not even scratched the surface. There's so much to do. Yeah.
Awesome. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up here before the directors behind the scene come for me. But it's been such a pleasure having this conversation with you, Toyin, and I thank you so much for sharing all that you shared, not just intellectually, but also from your heart, right? A lot of emotion and a lot of gems. I'm sure that people will get it from this conversation, and they can reapply to their own entrepreneurial journey, and then be able to achieve a degree of success faster, quicker, which is the reason we do what we do. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Any final words before we cut the
when I was 17, my dad had a library, by the way, and I hopefully inherited that culture from him. But there's a book I stumbled on in his library when I was 17, Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think it was in that book I first read this. I am hoping I'm correct. But there's a scene that I picked. I think whether that book or some other book. Impossible is a big word carried around by small men who would rather live in the world they have been given than explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is nothing. It's also an Adidas quote. And I think for me, that's that my pattern words. Impossible is nothing. We all have to dare the impossible. I don't know how. I mean, that's what keeps me alive. That's what keeps my life fun, even though it's painful, but I enjoy it. So let's all dare the impossible and do big things. Yeah.
Wow. Dare the impossible. Well, do big things. Thanks a lot, Toyin. I really appreciate that. All right, viewers, thanks a lot for listening in today. See you on the next one. Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and also making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you on the next episode.